Hello everybody, Jonny here. We're back with an impressions video. The devs from Toadman Interactive have allowed me a couple days to play with their new game that's upcoming in September called Immortal Unchained. You can see my first 25 minutes with the game at the end of this video. There will be a link to that. But I've gotten the chance, as I said, to spend a couple days playing after work. I've got about 6 hours into the game and got a better idea of what it has to offer, so let's jump into it. So first things first, what is this game? If you haven't seen or heard anything about it, it's basically a Souls-like game with a large focus on shooting, actually, which is sort of the unique thing that caught my eye straight away. But it also has melee attacks, and it has a lot of stuff going on here, so let's talk about some of the stuff that it has to offer. Like I said, I spent quite a few hours already, so I have a decent idea of what the experience is like in the game, but I didn't necessarily get as far as I would have liked. So this is not a full review. Take everything I say with a grain of salt. All of these are just my thoughts after that number of hours with the game. So the first thing that struck me going into the game is how good it looks. I was really impressed with the overall locations that I experienced and the character model. There were some issues when sprinting. Some of the movement didn't feel 100% natural, but outside of that, I was very impressed with the animations. They're very satisfying. I was going for a melee build, essentially, or a melee focus at least. And I gotta say, clubbing dudes with the weapons is something that's very satisfying. And there's something almost clinical about the way the game looks. It's very sleek. I enjoy, again, just experiencing it as a visual experience was very nice. Which is something, you know, not many games can offer, especially in the genre. If you look at something like The Surge, despite me enjoying that game quite a bit, I had a lot of issues, especially with the locations being very repetitive and you're always being indoors, so to speak. Here, once you get through the first area, you actually jump into a hub world type situation. From that point on, you can go to different locations as you unlock them, and each of them seem to have a very identifiable theme. And it's, you know, they're different enough to keep the variety quite high here. Again, just judging by the ones that I've experienced. Talking about some other gameplay elements, the basic gameplay loop here is you're going to die multiple times. That's going to be a prominent part of the experience. And once you die, you will lose all of your bits. Now, bits are the main currency in the game that will allow you to level up and upgrade your gear. Of course, that's the equivalent of souls in any Dark Souls game. And here, you follow the same mechanic where if you're able to get to your corpse or where you died, you'll be able to recover all of those bits. So that's gonna be the gameplay loop going into it, and trust me, death is gonna be something that you're gonna encounter often in this game. I've found it to be very difficult, and some of the bosses were especially difficult for me because I was doing this sort of melee focused build. A lot of them, they weren't really viable to approach in that way. Instead, the game really seemed to push you to do a more balanced approach where you use ranged attacks when it behooves you, which is quite often, and only go in for melee attacks when it's safe. Now, I've had some issues with that because, of course, I wasn't putting many points into my ranged weapon damage, and that left me lacking in that department. So some of the bosses I had quite a bit of trouble with just because my damage was severely lacking. So from that perspective, I would have liked to see the ability to respec at some point. Maybe further into the game, you do get access to that. So far, I hadn't. And again, that decision sort of came to bite me in the ass, especially as I encountered a specific boss that only became vulnerable at one point in the fight, or at certain points in the fight. And it didn't seem like I could reach him with regular melee attacks. And as I ran out of ammo very quickly because my damage was very small with that ranged weapon, that put me in a very untenable situation. And what I ended up doing is moving past that and try to advance in other areas. But I do think that it would have been nice to give you the ability to switch up your build. Another smaller quibble that I had playing this is that I noticed the commands aren't necessarily queued, or at least not consistently, so let me explain what I mean by this. If I am, for example, in the middle of an attack animation and I issue a roll command, I'm used to that being queued in terms of when, as soon as the attack animation finishes, I will perform that roll, right? The game will remember me having issued that command. So that is of course good and bad for you at times, because you need to be strategic with what commands you issue. But regardless, I'm sort of used to having it that way. Here, it's not as consistent. Sometimes you will find that the roll command in this example would not come through. So what that means is that in practice, you either have to make sure you're not in the middle of another animation when you issue that command, or you actually end up sort of spamming it. So you spam it towards the end of the attack animation so that the game will for sure pick it up. Now, I'm not a huge fan of this approach. I understand many people are, and that's fine. So if that's not an issue for you, that's, well, a non-issue for you. But for me, it was noticeable being used to the other system, so I thought I'd mention it. So then, do I recommend you go out there and buy this game on release? Well, if you're a Souls fan, or if you're looking for a challenging, engaging experience, this is a great pickup. But I'm not gonna lie to you, this game takes a little persistence. You're gonna die, you're gonna have to redo areas, redo bosses. If that sort of stuff puts you off, then maybe this is not your jam. Make sure that it is before you jump into it. It's not gonna magically change your thoughts about the genre. But if you're into it, it definitely has the stuff. It has good game design, good level design, interesting bosses, cool enemies, and definitely cool animations as well. So it is a good polished package as is. I do recommend you go check it out. Definitely check out the first 25 minutes of gameplay that I have on the channel. That stuff will be coming up at the end of this video. Definitely appreciate the devs giving me these 2 days to check out their game. Appreciate that stuff. Let me know down below, guys, if you have any thoughts, criticisms, or suggestions for the next video. And as always, thanks for watching. Catch you next time.